Hi, this is Bruce with the Bowski Studio. I want to thank you for joining me today. We'll be working on part 3 of the hay bale painting here. Going to be working on a little more detail in the trees right here. So let's begin and get started. Thanks again for joining me.
Hi everyone, here we are. What I'm going to be doing is working on the background trees and all over the painting, but right here I'm working on the background trees, blocking in some generic tones for the overall effect of the color of the branches, detailing out some of them right now. I'll do more of that later. And pretty much this is one day after the original painting, so some parts of the painting are still pretty wet. Obviously the whites area is mixed with a lot of white, I should say, and some of the other colors are kind of tacked up enough to overlay new color. Again, I'm using the linseed oil as a medium, and here I'm just kind of cutting around with the evergreen color in certain parts to bring out some of the foreground branches. Here I'm taking a flat brush and just with enough paint on the end of it with a very light touch, striking in a few of the tree trunks you see there. Give a little balance with different brush marks. A lot of times I'll use a small round brush for the detail work. You'll see that a little bit later. And doing it kind of in all areas, dancing around while I have that color on my brush. So kind of facilitate. And I don't brush around too much back and forth. You want to avoid that because then you just start potentially mixing into that tone I just put on underneath. This paint's a little thicker, so it glides on a little better. You want to be careful about having too strong an edge. When you initially apply the paint, you can always go back over that very lightly. Some areas you may want to leave that way. Depends on what you're trying to achieve. So that's what this section of the painting's about. There's many different ways you can apply this effect of tree trunks. Depends on the scale of your painting, of course. Some artists will use a palette knife held almost parallel to the canvas, or depending on this type of palette knife, there's many types, but and then they'll just put those trunks on there. Here I'm doing a few little different designs of twigs. Not everything is kind of straight like the other trees. Sometimes I'll let the painting dry completely all over, depending on when I'll get back to it, and also depending on the effects I want. Something else you can think about too is if you're doing the painting in layers, the first layer, study it when you're done and see if there's any overly excessive thick areas of paint that may interfere with future layers of paint. You'll want to kind of skim those down a little bit with a palette knife, just knock them down a bit, take off that ridge of paint, so to speak, that you'll find in certain areas. That'll help facilitate the next layers to go on a little easier. Just doing a little bit of background work here. Cleaning up the edges of the bale there. I don't want too strong a line, obviously, because it can still appear to come forward and be strong by virtue of the chromatic quality of the paint, of the light on the snow, while the colors behind it are kind of gray. So that's one way to get colors to pop a bit. See that little stick that just came in screen there? That's my maul stick. Use that to, as you see there, to steady my hand. Cleaning up some curves. Because even though the snow, you had a snowstorm, you get the snow in the bale. Um, while the temperature may change different days and the way the snow sinks in a case like with on top of that bale, it's going to stay a little more rounded. So when I was painting the background around it, it kind of dipped into the flex edge I had. So that's why I was cleaning that up. It's a back and forth process. I like to do some more hay bale paintings. I really like the shape of hay bales in landscape and the idea of them with what they mean for the feed for animals, and just shows the hard work that farmers do to round up their fields with the hay, preparation for the seasons. And what I've done with the little bit of highlight paint that I had left over from yesterday for that I had cad red light in, so it ended up with a very faint pink, is now I've added some cad yellow light with titanium white, and got that the same value, and intermixing that just a bit to have some different levels of light. Very subtle, but I'm liking it quite a bit. I really favor the type of brushes that you see me using now. Those rounds are, I really enjoy those. I purposely, I try to work with the flats to get some different strokes in the painting, so it's important. Here I am cutting around this tree. I noticed after the first session that the trees were too much alike and in a row, so I'm shortening one of them. And I do like the fact that there's 5, an odd number of these evergreen trees. It's a nice effect to think of. Now I'm coming back, going to be working on some more of the hay bale. Here I am now, I'm putting in some more darks in where the bale's been wound up. And I'll put in the initial darks first, and then work around them with the light tones to facilitate showing the highlights. And again, this is with that limited palette. And for those of you that haven't seen part 1 and 2, I urge you to do that to check those out. But the paint is ivory black, titanium white, ultramarine blue, cad yellow pale, and cad red light. I like to experiment with the limited palettes quite a bit. Finding areas where the shadow is going to make sense. Of course, we have rounded parts of the snow as it folds around, because that darkness represents kind of a dip in the hay bale as it's facing the light, so the snow needs to correlate with that. And with the background trees I've been working on in the background, it's just kind of the beginning stages of how I'll approach the next session. I'll do a little more dry brush scumbling of tree branches in there to suggest roughness and that sort of thing. Like to see a painting progress like this. It's really quite interesting what paint can do when you take your time and how it can represent the natural world. It's really fascinating. Working a little more with the darks again. So I really like the fact that, of course, with the focal point with the 3 bales, asymmetrical number, just as with the evergreen trees that I mentioned before, asymmetrical number. So that's kind of nice. I like that. And I know sometimes for some people watching these videos, I've done videos under 10 minutes and that sort of thing, just showing kind of steps. I paint a little bit, film it, and then paint a little bit, and then pick up the filming again to show the 10 minutes of painting that I did after the first session. And so it ends up being kind of piecemeal. And I feel that when people are watching videos to learn how to paint, I think this format's kind of really useful. Obviously, I'm still working on getting that nice mix of information with time frame. Uh, I think with this method, with the voiceover and being able to describe things and ideas of art and that sort of thing while I'm showing the video and talking about the particular effects in whatever painting I'm working on is important, and you can learn a lot more that way. So please, comment. Let me know what you think. It's important to get some feedback from you guys so that I can improve the quality of my videos so that I can really have my knowledge come across and help you guys out. That's kind of what I'm doing these videos for, hoping someone can learn from them. And it helps me too, also, I think, to verbalize what I think of art or what I'm thinking in a painting. So it goes both ways. And I'm really glad you guys are watching these vids. Really important to me that I'm relating to other artists out there. So thanks, everyone. Here I am working on the reflected lights in the snow. Really trying to make it come to life now. I'm jumping back to the trees. You see how just little abstract marks almost, but I'm still showing some form of the tree. I'm not just haphazardly sticking limbs in there. I'm trying to show some structure to the tree. The key with this painting is going to be I'm not looking for photorealism. I want to suggest the trees, have them stay in the background. That balancing act that we as artists face of how much information to put in. And I'm pulling some of that wet sky. That sky is still wet in some parts there. So I can get away with just putting a few branches at a time through there. And it mixes just in a subtle way so that you get some ghosting in the branch so it doesn't look pasted onto the canvas. I'm going to try to avoid that most of the time. You see how that white to the left of my brush tip there came in from the sky. That's okay. Subtle little effects, very light touch on the brush. The key is to pick up paint frequently. Have some medium in it so it flows but not runny. And then over this layer when it dries, it's when I'll do the more drier brush strokes with the round brush to get that texture of bark, simulated look of bark and all that. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm still anxious once we get some nice weather here in Maine to get down to the local creek that we have on some college land, some nice hiking trails, and do some nice interior woods scenes. I mean, so much I want to do. Time, we all run into that. As long as we're doing something every day with our art, I think that's important too. Like I read tons of, quite a few magazines that, of course, I get at Barnes & Noble. You have one of my favorites is Plein Air magazine. I don't know if other artists out there refer to that, but some really good paintings in there and tips and all that sort of thing. Then, of course, you got American Art Collector, like like that a lot too. I like seeing a bunch of different work. It's really inspiring, and sometimes maybe you think you're doing all right and stuff, but then you find out, wow, I'm not really pushing to become my best. And we all have lives to lead. Everyone probably works other jobs, so time is limited. But it's important to do something towards your art every day, and I do. Um, I don't necessarily paint every day. Sometimes I haven't painted for a while, and I'll come back to painting in general. And I feel like I'm better than I was before because during that gap in time, I still was reading, observing. I still like take walks and look at the sky, look at the clouds, take pictures. So I'm still forming and doing things with my mind just because I'm not physically painting. So it's almost like sometimes quantity doesn't always equal quality. Um, that's my opinion. Everyone has an opinion. So, yeah, ideally the goal is to try to do more paintings to learn even more about how to apply the paint and such. Now here I am dancing around that evergreen, just getting some suggestions of leaves and the forest effect. Working on the foreground, little shrubby type brush, tree. There's a nice feature behind that right hand bale. And if you've seen the reference photograph, not everything is exactly like the photograph. Number one, the photograph wasn't that great, but it had the bones I wanted with the hay bales. So I want to understand the shapes, but I'm not looking to be, a forest ranger that can identify trees. And while I think that's helpful, I'm an artist, just looking for a nice painting and the paint application, that sort of thing. So here I am working on the hay bales again, cleaning up some of those edges to not have them be so hard against the hay. And you see at the underneath my brush there in that left hand bale, the shadow and how it's kind of integrated into the darkness of the bale along the edge. It's kind of a nice broken edge there. And then you got the contrast of that with the edge and the highlight in the snow to the left of that. I like that effect a lot. Excuse me. Putting on little thicker dabs of the highlight color here and there. Not moving the paint around too much, either cleaning off the brush or picking up more paint. And I try to just wipe off excess paint. Try not to clean the brush too much in the painting process, too excessively, so you don't have that wet turpentine in the brush. Mostly just try to get the excess of paint off, and then with any other paint I want to use, I'll just get more paint on. So if I don't move the brush around too much, I won't really disturb what's underneath. Then at a certain point, yes, you do clean it out. If I'm doing that a lot, I'll try to use similar tones of color or color fields rather than having some dark on my brush, wiping that off and trying to go into a light tone. Kind of asking for trouble there, but use logic. Okay. As you can see, sometimes my idea of filming gets away from me. I'm working on the other bale that you can't see in frame. Sorry about that. I'll work on that. Doing a little detail work over there, so whoops, nice shot of my hand. Stuff happens. Not a Hollywood movie maker, sorry. Sometimes I get obsessed with detail in the painting sometimes, and really trying to work on finding that balance. I was also thinking about doing some videos too on kind of more of a, for lack of a better term, fireside chat kind of effect. Just talk about my ideas about art, artists that inspire me, videos I may watch that I think are pretty fascinating to share with you guys. That even though everyone kind of cruises on YouTube looking at stuff, may have missed certain ones, and that's how I get turned on to painters. Sometimes another painter might suggest something, or I'll read about an artist I admire, and then they'll talk about their influences for painters, and then I'll look up some of those people, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that. And, next thing you know, I'm buying books on some other painter. I got quite a library. I think that might be interesting, is to go through my library with books that I really enjoyed and felt like I learned a lot out of, and maybe help you guys maybe either get the book yourself, read up on it, or just start dialogue along those lines of how I got inspired and what inspires me. So let me know what you think of that idea. You never know where you're going to get a good idea for a painting. Back into detail, striking in that nice shadow on the snow side of the veil. Practically, pure ultramarine and titanium white. Try and get a little thicker layer on this time. And you see the edge falling into the shadow of the bale on the bale I'm working on now. I may work on that, doing that with the bale on the right also. Just to have a little broken edge effect there. And that's key sometimes, and we lose track of that. It'd be nice to really get in the habit at the end of the painting sessions to really study the painting for edge control. Kind of really focusing, making sure your focal points aren't getting obliterated. Your effects there. Make sure you get some variety, all that sort of thing. Some interesting aspect of this right now is it's zoomed in like this, is that nice abstract shape of the grasses and twiggy type stuff behind the bales, yet the bales themselves are pretty highly detailed texture. Kind of a cool effect. Loving those bales. Okay. Cutting back in around some of the tree shapes. And the key when you're cutting into some sky holes in the trees, like as you get lower into the trees, is to make your whatever sky color you're using a little bit darker, because as it gets put into the dark area, it's going to appear lighter. So if you have the same tone that you have in the sky, it's going to look even really lighter and brighter. So,
okay, this concludes part 3 of my hay bale painting. And in this one, like I said, I just want to show how I'm going to start handling some of the background trees. And landscapes present their own challenges as opposed to urban. But I'm liking how it's coming out. You can see through the video I've made a few adjustments, obviously. And let me know if you're liking the voiceover technique I'm using. I think it's more helpful to people for learning to paint. And now I'm going to pan in for some details. Show you how it's coming along up close, even though I taped a few close-ups. Let me see how well this does. I don't think it can lock on this close, but kind of very abstract in the background there. I want to thank you for watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe if you like the content here. Check out more videos, And be sure to check out my Etsy shop and my book I have on plein air on Amazon, Kindle. Just look under Bruce Zabowski. It's just one listing. And thanks for watching.